You think one bad leader can't ruin everything? Think again. History proves it. One reckless decision can bring down an empire. But what if I told you Rome's fall didn't start with invasions, corruption, or civil wars? What if it all came down to a single father-son decision that shattered centuries of stability? Tonight we're diving into how the greatest empire in history began its downfall. Not with a battle, but with a bad inheritance. The year 180 CE marked a profound turning point in the history of the Roman Empire. With the death of Marcus Aurelius, the so-called Golden Age of Pax Romana came to an end, and his son Commodus ascended the throne, ushering in a period of instability and decline. To understand the significance of this moment, one must first consider the legacy of Marcus Aurelius, the nature of Pax Romana, and the consequences of Commodus's rule. This transition not only altered the political and economic fabric of Rome, but also set the stage for long-term disruptions that would ultimately contribute to the empire's decline. Marcus Aurelius, often remembered as the philosopher king, was one of the most revered emperors of Rome. His reign, from 161 to 180 CE, was defined by his Stoic philosophy, as reflected in his personal writings, Meditations, which continue to be studied for their wisdom and introspection. Unlike many of his predecessors, Marcus ruled with a strong sense of duty, viewing leadership as a moral obligation rather than a means to personal enrichment. His governance was marked by military campaigns against the Germanic tribes along the Danube, internal stability, and a commitment to justice. Despite these efforts, his reign was not without difficulties, particularly as external pressures from barbarian groups increased and the Antonine Plague weakened the empire's population. Yet, even in the face of these challenges, Marcus maintained the relative peace and prosperity that had defined the Pax Romana. The Pax Romana, or Roman peace, was a period of stability that had lasted for over 2 centuries, beginning with the reign of Augustus in 27 BCE. This era was characterized by minimal large-scale conflict within the empire's borders, a flourishing economy, and an extensive infrastructure that facilitated trade and communication across Europe, North Africa, and the Near East. It was not a time without warfare. Rome continued to expand and defend its frontiers, but compared to the chaos of the late Republic and the crises that would follow, it was an age of order and prosperity. The political system established by Augustus, which balanced autocratic rule with the illusion of senatorial authority, allowed for competent administrators to maintain this stability. Under emperors like Trajan, Hadrian, and Antoninus Pius, the empire reached its territorial zenith and achieved remarkable economic and cultural heights. However, the end of Marcus Aurelius's reign would shatter this fragile equilibrium. His death in 180 CE was not merely the passing of an emperor, but the symbolic end of an era. He was the last of the so-called 5 good emperors, a series of rulers who had ascended through a system of adoption rather than hereditary succession. This method had ensured that competent and capable leaders took the throne, rather than simply passing power through bloodlines. Unfortunately, Marcus broke with this precedent by naming his biological son Commodus as his successor. This decision would have catastrophic consequences. Commodus, who became emperor at the age of 19, was a stark contrast to his father. Where Marcus was philosophical, disciplined, and duty-bound, Commodus was extravagant, self-indulgent, and increasingly detached from the responsibilities of governance. Early in his reign, he made a significant departure from his father's policies, seeking peace with the Germanic tribes rather than continuing Rome's military campaigns. While this may have seemed pragmatic, his broader leadership style quickly revealed his unsuitability for rule. He preferred the luxuries of court life over the burdens of administration, delegating much of his authority to corrupt officials and unscrupulous favorites. His reign soon descended into excess and paranoia. Commodus saw himself as a living god, styling himself after Hercules and participating in gladiatorial combat, much to the horror of the Senate and Rome's elite. He spent lavish amounts of money on games, spectacles, and personal indulgences while neglecting the empire's pressing issues. Corruption flourished under his rule, as he placed unqualified individuals in positions of power in exchange for loyalty. He even renamed Rome after himself, calling it Colonia Lucia Annia Commodiana, a move that underscored his increasing detachment from reality. Beyond his personal eccentricities, Commodus's leadership weakened the structural integrity of the empire. The administration became increasingly unstable as power shifted between factions vying for influence. assassination plots became common, and Commodus responded with brutal purges, further alienating the Senate and military elite. His misrule ultimately led to his assassination in 192 CE, a conspiracy led by his own inner circle, including his mistress and the head of his Praetorian Guard. His death plunged Rome into a year of civil war, known as the Year of the Five Emperors, in which multiple claimants vied for the throne. This chaos foreshadowed the even greater instability of the 3rd century. The consequences of Commodus's rule and the end of the Pax Romana were profound. In the immediate aftermath of his death, Rome experienced a rapid succession of emperors, each struggling to assert control over a fracturing empire. While some leaders, such as Septimius Severus, managed to temporarily stabilize the situation, the underlying problems persisted. The military became an increasingly dominant political force, often choosing emperors based on loyalty rather than competence. The economy suffered from inflation and over-reliance on slave labor, while external threats from Germanic tribes and the Parthians grew more severe. Looking at the broader historical narrative, the year 180 CE represents the beginning of Rome's slow but inexorable decline. While the empire would endure for centuries, splitting into eastern and western halves and witnessing periods of revival, it never fully recaptured the stability of the early imperial period. Historians such as Edward Gibbon, in the History of the Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire, viewed the death of Marcus Aurelius as the moment when Rome's decline began, arguing that the loss of capable leadership set the stage for increasing instability. Though modern historians recognize the complexity of Rome's fall, there is little doubt that the transition from Marcus Aurelius to Commodus marked a fundamental shift in the empire's trajectory. Despite the tragedies of his reign, Commodus's legacy remains a cautionary tale about the perils of unrestrained autocracy, the dangers of hereditary succession, and the fragility of even the most powerful empires. His rule demonstrated how a single incompetent leader could undermine centuries of stability, and his assassination set in motion events that would ultimately weaken Rome beyond repair. What began as a peaceful and prosperous empire under Augustus in 27 BCE would, within a few centuries, crumble under the weight of its own internal divisions and external pressures. And while historians continue to debate the precise causes of Rome's decline, few would dispute that the year 180 CE was the moment when its long journey toward ruin truly began. I'll leave you to discuss in the comments. If you had to pick the absolute worst leader in history, who would it be? You can support us by subscribing if you haven't already. Take care of yourselves, take care of your loved ones, and I'll catch you soon in another video.